Hello everyone, and welcome to A Teacher Explains.
I'm a teacher, and in this video, I'm going to explain normative theories of mass communication. Now, these theories are a little different. They don't just describe how the media works, they actually prescribe how it should work. They set up an ideal, a standard for the media's role and its responsibilities in our society. All right, let's get into it. So here's our roadmap. First, we'll nail down what makes a theory normative. Then, we'll explore that classic tug of war between total media freedom and total state control. After that, we'll see how the idea of social responsibility popped up as a kind of middle ground. We'll also look at some more modern, global takes on these theories. And we'll wrap it all up by thinking about what this all means in the wild, digital world we live in today. Okay, so first things first, let's tackle that fundamental question. What exactly are normative theories? Right, so unlike theories that try to, say, predict or describe media effects, normative theories are all about values. They're basically an ethical framework. They give us a set of ideals we can use to look at our media systems and ask, are they doing a good job? They help us grapple with those really big questions, like what does the media truly owe us, the public? You know, these ideas didn't just appear out of thin air. They really grew out of some very real anxieties about the media's growing power. Think about the era of yellow journalism, where crazy, sensational headlines often mattered way more than the actual facts. That kind of thing forced people to stop and ask a pretty crucial question. Shouldn't there be some ethical rules for the press? And that question, right there, really set the stage for everything we're about to discuss. The whole history of normative theory, really, can be seen as this constant push and pull between two big opposing ideas. The desire for absolute freedom on one side and the argument for absolute control on the other. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got authoritarian theory. This basically says the press works for the state. Its job is to support the government and keep things orderly. But on the complete opposite side, you have libertarian theory. It argues that the media should be totally 100% free from any government interference because freedom of speech is seen as this fundamental sacred right. And the heart of that libertarian theory is this self-righting principle, which John Milton famously wrote about. The idea is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. If you let all ideas, the good, the bad, the ugly, compete out in the open, the truth will eventually rise to the top. This single idea was so influential, becoming a cornerstone for many democratic societies. Now that principle later evolved into a concept you've probably heard of, the marketplace of ideas. The analogy is pretty straightforward. It says that ideas should compete for public approval just like different products compete for customers in a store. The big assumption here is that a rational public will, in the end, sort through everything and choose the best, most truthful ideas. And this is where things get tricky. I mean, the marketplace concept is obviously essential for a democracy, but it has some pretty serious flaws. It kind of assumes everyone has an equal voice, but we know that's not true, right? Money, who owns the media companies, and today, powerful algorithms, they can all warp this marketplace. They can let false and harmful ideas spread just as easily as good ones, and sometimes maybe even faster. So because of those big problems with a purely libertarian model, especially as new media like radio and film came along, people started looking for a middle ground. They wanted an approach that could protect freedom, but also demand some accountability. This shift was driven by a few key things. First, seeing the power of propaganda in the early 20th century really freaked people out. It showed just how easily media could be used for manipulation. So, in response, journalism started to professionalize. It created its own codes of ethics, partly to self-regulate and keep the government from stepping in. All of this really came to a head with the Hutchins Commission in 1947, which officially proposed a brand new theory. And this leads us to a really critical compromise: social responsibility theory. The core idea is that freedom of the press isn't just a right. It's a right that comes with responsibilities. It's like a deal. In exchange for its freedom, the media has a duty to serve the public good by being truthful, by being fair, by being accurate, and by making sure lots of different voices and viewpoints can be heard. But of course, the conversation didn't just stop in 1947. As the world got more connected and the media became much more of a big business, these theories had to evolve again just to keep up. So that brings us to the dual responsibility theory. It's a pretty practical update because it acknowledges a simple fact. Most media outlets are also businesses that need to make money. This theory says that media companies have two big obligations that they have to juggle. One is to serve the public, and the other is to serve their owners and shareholders. And the real challenge, of course, is how you balance those two things when they pull in opposite directions. And this really shows that there's no single way of doing things that works everywhere. William Hatchton's work, for example, highlights just how different media systems are around the world. The Western model, that mix of freedom and responsibility we've been talking about, is just one way. In other places, the media is expected to help the country develop, or to be a tool for revolution, or even to act as a direct mouthpiece for the state. And all of that brings us right up to the present day. Because, as you can imagine, the internet and digital platforms have completely scrambled the whole conversation about what the media's role in society should be. Yeah, the internet really was a paradigm shift. Information isn't just controlled by a few big news organizations anymore. You've got citizen journalism, blogs, social media. The traditional gatekeepers of information have lost a lot of their power. And this massive decentralization brings with it both amazing opportunities and some pretty serious challenges. So, to try and make sense of all this, a lot of experts now lean toward what's called a transitional approach. This view basically says that those old, rigid boxes like authoritarian or libertarian don't really fit our world anymore. Instead, it sees media systems as fluid, dynamic things that are constantly being shaped by new technology, by globalization, and by local culture. So, to sum it all up, the evolution of normative thought is really this long, ongoing conversation about the proper relationship between media, government, and the public. We've seen it move from strict state control to radical freedom, and then to a compromise based on social responsibility, and now to these more flexible models that are trying to make sense of our complicated digital global world. And that leaves us with a really big, pressing question for our time. In an age of powerful algorithms, global social media platforms, and individual influencers, who gets to define what media responsibility even means anymore? And maybe more importantly, how do we make sure it's upheld? Is that the job of the platforms? Is it up to individual creators, governments? Or is it up to us, the audience? This is truly one of the great unfinished conversations of the digital age.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel.